friends. We are going to get started here in our podcast.
Yeah, this is all new for us, so just enjoy this experience because it could very easily not translate when it comes to listening to the podcast. But anyways, we're going to have a good time. Nonetheless, the content will be good. So, is that better?
That's so much better.
Okay.
Like, just aim for this.
Ash, aim for this too. So, if Ash and I look like we're making out,
maybe they
if
are.
I'm lucky, we are.
That would be awkward for me.
You just keep talking.
I'll just keep talking.
Okay, here we go.
All right, let's talk about going for the gold in marriage. I think a lot of people live in loveless marriages and they just survive and don't really have intimacy or connection and get through the years and raise kids together, and that's that.
So what are you describing our first 14 years? Is that...
Oh, maybe. Yeah, hopefully.
No, you are.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, you are.
Hopefully going forward it's different. So
it will be.
I think a lot of people live this way. They find a comfortable place in marriage where there's not a ton of conflict, but there's also not a lot of intimacy and connection. And, we get stuck in that rut. And I don't think any of us got married hoping to have a roommate. We want something more out of marriage. So I think the first thing let's talk about is how does it happen? How do you get stuck there? You say you were there the first 14 years of your marriage.
Right, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the way you described it, of saying
I'm like moving.
Saying that you want to avoid conflict. That was our whole goal, was avoid conflict so that we don't have to talk about the hard stuff and actually have maybe some growth.
Yeah. Yes.
I think it was also out of I think that existence that we had has everything to do with the fact that we didn't want to be uncomfortable, to be sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to, therefore we avoided, but we also we had skills. Like, it wasn't modeled for us how to deal with difficult things, how to deal with conflict, and so it was just like, oh, so what can we enjoy? What can we do to avoid this? And so I think that was probably really where it came from.
Yeah, so, I think you're spot on, Gobi. Is one, you don't like pain, you don't like conflict, so you just avoid it. And when you avoid it, then you avoid getting close. And, a marriage is like anything. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And when you start avoiding, you're not going to get much out of your marriage. The other thing is the lack of skill. You start to avoid it because it feels like you're beating your head against a wall. The more you go for intimacy and connection, these unhealthy patterns of behavior are in your marriage. It's all you know. You don't know how to do anything different, and so why keep trying when it ends up in a fight, when it ends up like you're feeling rejected, and you shut each other down. And so it's easier to just shut up, smile, and go on with life, right? But it's really not.
That was totally us. And if you think about this, Ashlyn, we would, if we weren't avoiding, then the only thing that we were doing when we talked about tough stuff was fighting.
Totally.
There wasn't any in between. And I think that goes to back what you alluded to, which is we had no skill set at all to deal with this.
And I think you say our 14 years of marriage was this unconnected, whatever, but we had moments, and the difference is now I can see those connecting moments, and they are not what we have now, because we are willing to talk about some of those things that maybe you wouldn't like to, but those are the things that can absolutely connect you and bring that intimacy.
So what you're saying, Ashlyn, is, and what I'm hearing you say is, now that you guys know how to create safety in your marriage and have that safety to talk about hard things, then you're willing to go there. You're willing to talk about those hard things.
Yeah, that vulnerability, really.
Yeah.
I mean, when either of us is vulnerable, and it can be anything, in marriage, it's an immediate connection, because you're like, oh, okay, they're they're letting down some of their, whoever that is that's holding back that vulnerability, they're letting it down, and they're finding that safe place with me.
So the walls have been broken down.
Yeah.
The vulnerability is available, and if you can both communicate what's vulnerable to you, but also hold and empathize with what's vulnerable to the other person, then you're getting intimacy, you're getting real connection. Things that break down intimacy and these unhealthy patterns, one is a lack of communication skills, just a lack of being able to connect. Another is shame. We talk about shame all the time.
Yeah.
When you have a lot of shame, then you don't want to get vulnerable, and so your defenses are very, very present, very there, easily triggered. And so if you want intimacy in your marriage, then you're going to have to work on your own shame so that you can both express things vulnerably and hold and have some empathy, hold space for the other person, right?
I love that, and it's absolutely the truth. And I don't think you read that in places. To have more intimacy, you need to work on yourself and figure out the shame. But that was a huge part of my change, was when I worked on my shame.
Right, exactly. So when you worked on your shame, Ashlyn, then you became probably safer for Kobe, and but you were also, it was just safer for yourself to engage. Even if Kobe's healthy or not, it's safer for yourself to engage with him, right? Yeah. So let me ask you this question, Kobe. Here's another thing that breaks down intimacy. When you were in the midst of all the lies, how intimate were you? How available, how vulnerable were you?
Yeah, it was, I wasn't, but if I can give you like a peek behind the curtain of what my thought process was, it was entirely, and I think, Ashley, you'll be able to identify with this and see this once I say this. It was like, I wasn't vulnerable, and I wasn't willing to be emotional. I wasn't willing to reveal myself because I didn't want to give any hint to the lies. Like, I didn't want to expose myself in any way emotionally to compromise a secret, to compromise the emotional affair, or to compromise and reveal the second affair, or to talk about, for instance, if I was on a trip and I was in overseas and I had relapsed, I didn't want to allude to anything about, like, I didn't want to even say, I avoided even saying if I didn't sleep last night because I was jet lagged, which is like to totally be expected when you're in like a completely different continent. But I didn't even want to allude to that, right, because for fear of that might be like, oh, so you didn't sleep last night, so what did you do? Stay up all night and watch porn?
Right.
Act out?
Right.
And so your question, yes, that's exactly it. But that, for me, it was like, if I can keep distance between Ashley and I, then she's not going to suspect that something really went sideways.
So,
but that in and of itself is evidence,
well, yeah,
of behavior that indicates acting out. It's just we didn't realize it at the time.
Right, because she couldn't connect to the real you. I mean, you were just you were hyper vigilant in your defenses against anything that she might say, and so you can't open up about anything because you have things to hide.
So that was my emotional Heisman.
Yeah.
And how I was in that.
There's no way to have an intimate, connected marriage with a ton of secrets. It doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. There's no way to have an intimate, connected marriage with a ton of shame, right? Here's another one for you. There's no way to have an intimate, connected marriage with a ton of resentment. And so how do you let go of that? How do you work through that? What do you guys think?
Oh, man.
I think it's like the answer that we always have. It's work on yourself and find empathy.
Yeah, really. We could throw that at everything and have your boundaries, right?
Right.
But resentment, though, let me just say this, though. I'm trying to put myself back when I was really in resentment. And I think what it was
like blaming.
Yeah. When I'm in resentment, I'm so deep into the rabbit hole of blaming you.
You're a victim.
Yeah.
Totally, right? It's like it was all about Ashlyn. And so it's like, it alludes to the drama triangle. As soon as I took responsibility for my own stuff, then I couldn't be victim, which meant I had way less resentment. Now I might have some core issues that maybe are valid issues, but those are like masked and completely buried when I'm in victim mode and blaming you.
That is the way out of resentment, is you taking accountability and being honest and owning your stuff. Because resentment is caused by one of two things. Either you haven't been assertive and held a boundary and been honest, or you haven't really truly let go of something and surrendered. And you can do, the good news is that's up to you. You can do one of those two things. If you just sit there and you don't let go of things, you don't surrender, but you also don't have a boundary, that's on you, right? It's not on the other person. And it's easy to get locked in resentment. One of the reasons why resentment causes years and years of a loveless marriage, it's easier to get locked in resentment than it is to stop and say, hang on, how am I contributing to a marriage that doesn't have love? How is this on me? And so, Ashlyn, if you can blame Kobe, and Kobe, if you can blame Ashlyn, then one thing you don't have to do is look at yourself, right? And people will do that for years, and they'll choose that over trying to create love in their marriage.
Let me give you a real life example, actually, like contrast. When we talk about like having skills to be able to, for me, for instance, take responsibility of my own stuff so that I can get out of victim mode and resentment. In 2000, it was like, I think, Mother's Day. Remember Mother's Day when we lived on Picturesque? Mm-hmm. That was like a place when we had a huge fight. Ashlyn was like in probably the height of betrayal trauma. I remember right before Mother's Day, she had lashed out, and we had this huge fight, and I fought back, and I was a total douche for sure, not understanding at all, not like entirely unempathetic. And I think we went to church that Mother's Day, and we sat in different rows. I think I sat behind you, didn't we?
Probably. I'd also miscarried the month before. I think
Right.
Forgetting that.
No. Well, it's not that's not
There's a lot of
part
trauma.
of it. There was like enormous amounts of trauma. But my point is that like I was entirely blaming you, and I was entirely unskilled, to be sure. And you likewise were like, he's such a douche. Like, I can't believe him. He's like scared that I'm pregnant, and then I miscarried, and he's all afraid about that, and he's not there. I mean, there's like all kinds of ways you could have resentment towards me, for sure, right? Well, that's one. I mean, it was like days and days and days. I don't know how long it lasted, that fight, but it was a long time. Contrast that to the fight we had before my 40th. That was a really big fight for us, relatively speaking, to our marriage. But once we both emotionally calmed down, it took like a 30-minute conversation. Right. And we were like apologizing, we were like crying with each other.
It ended in real connection.
It really was connection. So when we talk about like the importance of skills, like once like we worked on ourselves, and because we worked on ourselves, we became aware of what I became aware, for instance, of blame and how I was in victim mode and how to take responsibility and own my own stuff. And
you identified your emotions.
Yeah, my own emotions and my own stuff that I needed to take care of in order to get into a healthy emotional state, as did you. And once we actually talk, then it's like,
right.
And we're like golden.
And compassion and empathy is possible.
Yeah.
At that point, right?
For sure.
But if you hang on to resentment, if you would have just been stuck in what a horrible person Ashlyn is in that fight, then there's no way it would have ended that way. It probably would have ended eventually in you just giving up and shutting down, and
or you have the same fight
again
times.
and again and again. Yeah.
We've done that too.
Yeah. And when couples do that, they have it over and over, and then eventually they just like,
let's not talk about
that. They think the other person's a joke or crazy or whatever, and so why go try?
Yeah.
Right? Which leads to another one, which is hopelessness. If you have a lot of hopelessness, then you're not going to put forth an effort to create connection and love in your marriage. So if you get to a place where, and this is a really scary place to get, but where, why even try? The other person doesn't care.
Like a classic case of the efforts.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so, I have the efforts, so just sit here and do nothing, because what's the point? Now, what I have to say to that is that's on you if you choose to do that. Because, and I'm going to be kind of blunt and direct here, that hurts your spouse, it hurts you, and it hurts your kids. And I realize it's a tough position to be in, because you feel like you're trapped, there's nothing you can do, but there is something that you can do. And hopelessness is always a lie. Things can always move forward. And if you're just hunkering down in your pain and your shame and your disconnection, then stand up and figure out how to create connection in your life, because you can. Learn how to first love yourself, learn how to love others, learn how to have compassion for your spouse who may suck at connecting to you and not know how to do it, and maybe wallowing in addiction or betrayal trauma or whatever it is. You still can have compassion and connection and learn how to do that. It doesn't mean you have to break boundaries or give up truths, right? And
so can I add something here, Brandon? So I was the person who did not know how to be vulnerable, did not know how to connect in other ways outside of physical, okay? Mm-hmm. And so when I really started to try to make efforts in order to be vulnerable and to say things that were really uncomfortable for me, even like, I'm sorry, was like a big step for me.
That was the fight we had continuously for years and years.
Yeah, like, you don't say I'm sorry the right way. And I was like, oh my gosh. So, I think a huge part of that is you're mentioning, like, if your spouse doesn't know how to do it, it is a learned skill. And
yes.
So recognize that and celebrate them when they try. Because
Absolutely.
It's so hard.
Yes. Yes, rather than focus on everything that they're not doing
Still
and how
not
hopeless
right.
it is. But oh my gosh, like, they tried a little thing that at least they're trying, right? So hopelessness, a step further than hopelessness is really scary when you get here in a relationship, and that's apathy.
Ooh,
it's
yeah,
just
for sure.
It's just like, I don't care anymore. I'm done.
And that's a really scary place, because I think that's the place that I was in. I know that was a place of apathy. That was the season I was in before both affairs. I think maybe for sure the first one. And I think I was still in a sense in a place of apathy, and that's just like, yeah, I just don't care.
Pulling out of that is, for couples, it's possible. I mean, you guys have done that, right? But when you're in that place, your relationship is really on the brink of, either you're married still, but you have no relationship, or it ends in a divorce. Mm-hmm. Because when you really truly get to that place of, I don't care. Like, I don't care if you jumped off a bridge. I don't care if you came and tried to hug me right now. I don't care. I don't want to connect to you at all. Mm-hmm. And, listen to that emotion for what it is, I think, because it's still an important emotion. It's saying something is not working. Something has to change. Again, it's not hopeless, but something needs to change.
Now, I want you to identify this, because it's just thought this crossed my mind. Is it possible for, I think it's possible for both partners in a relationship to have apathy. But is it possible that one partner have apathy and the other partner be completely ignorant to that?
Oh my gosh.
Are you describing our relationship?
but I think that's important to note. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like I was like completely in that state of apathy. So, but in your experience as the expert, is that the case?
I see it all the time, and it's.
Is that where it primarily exists, where one partner's in apathy and the other partner has no idea?
I'd say it differently. I'd say one partner might be apathetic mm-hmm. about the connection in the relationship, and the other partner really, really has an idea, but they don't know what they're dealing with. And so what I mean is,
I don't know how big it is.
Yeah, when somebody really disconnects in apathy, when there's not love there, the other partner will feel it and know it.
Okay, you know how that manifested for us? Every time you asked me, are you having an affair?
Yeah.
And I would say no, because that's probably, you probably had, those were gut feelings for you, were they not?
Yeah, no, I would ask him a lot at this second affair. Like, you don't seem like you're very different, and it was immediate, like, don't. Just
don't connect.
don't talk about
talk.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like defenses, and not only was I unwilling to be vulnerable, but I was aggressive.
I would say,
pushing her
but
away.
I would say you weren't apathetic.
No?
No, because
Did you care if I
apathetic would have been, yeah, I am. Why do you care? I don't
I
care.
wasn't in apathy then.
I don't care if you're hurt by that. I don't care. Whatever. Yeah. So apathy really is scary. You were still in defensiveness. You were still in. Yeah, I don't want to. You were in shame, not apathy. I don't want to get found out. So you were disconnecting because of your shame.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Yeah. Disconnection. You think about connection, and it's not just. It's not just connecting, like having sex, for example. Mm-hmm. It's not just having sex in your marriage. It means you have intimacy. Connection happens subtly, and it happens consistently, and it's little things like smiling at each other, or maybe a little inside joke, or a hug. You just feel an energy of connection when you're there and connected. The opposite is true. If the other person is constantly not wanting to connect with you, then you feel that dullness, you feel that rejection. Mm-hmm. That might not be blatant, hey, I reject you, I don't want you.
Meaning it might not be mindful, it could be mindless.
Yeah, from the part of the rejector, so to speak. Like they're mindlessly rejecting you. They just don't want to connect to you. And you'll feel that as the partner, and you'll know that it's happening, but you might feel a little bit crazy. You might get accused of being needy because you want more connection. Things aren't working in the relationship. And so getting intimacy is, sex is a great way to have intimacy, but intimacy is much more complex than that. And it's a spiritual, emotional, physical connection that happens in a relationship. Sometimes, in order to go for intimacy in a relationship, here's another thing that holds people back is fear. They don't want to create change, and change is difficult. Mm-hmm. And so it's easier to sit back and just kind of live the way you're living than it is to sometimes it takes real conflict, sometimes it takes real honesty in order for change to happen. So I see a relationship get worse before it gets better oftentimes, where somebody has to kick up the dust a little bit and say, look, like, here's where I'm at. This is the truth. This is not working. I can't keep going this way. And so, you get caught in a between a rock and a hard place of I don't want to go cause conflict in my marriage because I know it'll end up in a fight and we don't have the tools to work through that. But I also don't want to end up being resentful and apathetic at the same time. And so I'm going to go for it. And I'm not going to go be a mean jerk and kick up the dust that way. But I'm not going to avoid hard topics. And I'm going to push that other person to meet my boundaries. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I'm looking at you saying, okay, you can share now.
No, I was just looking at that.
Yeah, I mean, I can identify moments in our marriage when that happened. In fact, I mean, that was what you just described was exactly us when right before our therapist, Amy Andrus, said, okay, Kobe, you're ready, and she's ready to disclose the second affair. Yep. But what was crazy is we were like 6 weeks into specialized therapy, right? And things were going so well. There was so much harmony, like deep, like real great connection.
So why kick up the dust?
I know,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I assure you that our lives modeled exactly what you just said, because our lives turned upside down. All of a sudden, after I disclosed that second affair, I was living in the basement. We didn't talk for like 6 weeks. We functioned as parents and as partners, but we didn't talk. And it's because the depth of the betrayal and what that was. So it did, in fact, for us, it took that happening for us to really turn the next corner. But in truth, we needed that. Recovery demanded that we kick up the dust, become uncomfortable so we could get past that. And so glad that we did. And I'll say, if there's, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking like, man, things are okay, like we can function, the kids are happy, they're busy, we're not super connected, I know we need to address some stuff. It's like, have the courage to do it. But if you need help, then get a really great therapist to walk you through that, someone that you trust, someone that's competent. Ashley loves the jingle on my watch. But someone that you can trust to help guide you through that, because that was exactly what we needed. And just remember that as much as that's uncomfortable, that uncomfortable feeling is just a small season in life that you can adjust to. Recovery is very, for the betrayed and addicted, in my opinion, is very much about being okay with being uncomfortable.
Right.
Because you realize, wait, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm not going to die.
Right. I can sit in that pain. I can be uncomfortable. And this is going to sound weird, but disclosing to her about the second affair paid dividends.
Yeah.
That sitting in that pain, facing it, dealing with it. And you know what? She might have divorced you. There was a vulnerable risk to it all.
And she said that. I don't know how I'm going to stay.
Yeah. And she very well could have. And that happens all the time. It still would have been the right thing to do.
Totally agree.
Or else you would have been stuck in a loveless marriage where you could only get so deep with her.
Yep.
Right?
And no matter if we would have stayed or not, if I had done that, that would have saved me. Like if she divorced me, and I hadn't disclosed that, right? Meaning I hadn't gone that place, I would have taken that same amount of shame about that into my next relationship.
Oh, for sure.
Which would have yielded,
Your
similar
healing
effect.
would not have happened.
No way.
No.
No way.
Yeah.
I had to.
So sometimes I feel like people look at, okay, we're going to go and we're going to finally get help and maybe create this intimacy that we want. That fear is like, they're looking at this long term, and maybe they hear our story and think, oh my gosh, they're that far into it, and it still is hard at times, but you got to get out of that to get out of fear. You have to look at it like, I'm going to do this today, and then tomorrow I can do this. I can go to therapy, I can go to group, or whatever it is for you, so that it's not this big giant mountain that you have to get over, because it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Well, I really like that, Ashlyn, and I'm going to say, no matter how bad your marriage is, or how stuck you've been, or how long you've been stuck in resentment or whatever, you can create some level of connection today. You don't have to look down the road and say, okay, when I've worked for as long as Ashlyn and Kobe, or then we'll start to have this. You can go start to love your spouse today, right where they're at. Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of steps to go before you have the level of intimacy and safety that you really want, but you can have it now to some degree.
And that's just, isn't that life? Like, I can't just plant raspberries and expect raspberries like next week.
Right.
Like,
right.
It's the natural process of growth. And if we can meet a plant where it's at and just say, I'm not expecting any raspberries from you, but I'm going to water you and give you sunshine. And I do that consistently, meet it where it's at and give it what it needs.
Focus on inputs, not output.
Yeah.
So don't focus on getting sex tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on figuring out how to love her today. And the sex and the other stuff will start to happen. You'll be harvesting raspberries in no time.
To be sure.
So I love the raspberry analogy because I got a great bushel of raspberries in my house. And they started giving me raspberries this year, finally.
Did they?
Yeah.
Are they rad? Are they good?
No, not really.
Everything this season, right? Sweet raspberries. You can expect sweet raspberries next year.
Yeah.
So okay, one of the things I want to end every podcast with is, okay, so where is hope found? If you're in a codependent, no, not in a codependent, if you're in a...
cohabitating?
Yeah, a cohabitating relationship right now.
A loveless marriage.
A loveless marriage. So, in a nutshell, where can hope be found for you?
Well, I want to go backwards a little bit with that question. Jenny and I, my wife, we celebrate our anniversary in a month, our 13-year anniversary.
That's awesome, congrats.
And, because I'm a therapist, we've had a perfect marriage. As you know. No, not really. We've had our ups and downs, right? And there's been moments of resentment and blame and all of that stuff. But one thing about us is we're willing to work, and we're not willing to give up and just settle for disconnection in our marriage. And I just want to say that the best thing in my life is my connection to her, and there's nothing that compares to that. And I when I hear about these loveless marriages, you're missing out on the greatest thing that there is. And so where's their hope? If you can't force your spouse to love you, right? You can't force each other to love you, but you can start to love the other person. And so I think that's where you begin, is figure out what's going on with you that you can't create love, and go do that in your marriage. Start there, and then look at your boundaries. And if you get to a point where you're doing everything you can to create love, and the other person wants to be in a loveless marriage, you may have to move on. But hope is that you can move forward. You don't have to stay stuck. So any thoughts on that?
I have a few people who've said this a lot lately. They say, my husband is amazing and he's so good and I want these things. If you feel that right there to me is hope, finding hope. And like, they are such a good person, and there's a reason that you were drawn together in the first place, right? And so maybe it's going backwards and saying, what brought me to you, and why did I fall in love with you? Because I need to figure that out and bring it back.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I guess the last thing I would say to add to this is, if you are that person who is seeking connection, you know that there is, you've coexisted for some time and you want change. Like Brandon said, sometimes we have to be willing to kick up dust in order to get to something that's really good, and rip off the scab, right? Rip off the Band-Aid, in order to get to proper healing. So my point would be is, if you have a partner who's willing to just say, okay, this is we're okay, but it can be so much better, and if they're willing to get help, then go get help.
Yeah.
But if they're not, you can still work on you now. And the cool thing is, and we've proven this, is as you work on the me, then you're more capable of working on the we. You're more effective in your own
Great
way
point.
to give to your partner who's unwilling, and you'll be more skilled yourself to identify your own emotions,
your weaknesses,
and gain a skill set that can help you love yourself and love the person. Because I guarantee you this, there's not one partnership where if one of the two worked on themselves and became a better individual and more skilled at empathy, more skilled at listening, more skilled at identifying their emotions, there's no way that's not going to have an effect on the partner who's not willing.
Right.
And that effect could very easily be a catalyst for them wanting to see change. Or whether it's with a therapist or on their own,
right,
wanting to change. And so
right.
the best thing you can do is just get help and work on you.
Yep.
In my opinion.
That's good. I want to add a couple things just to the end here. We have an awesome Facebook page going. If you haven't gone and liked our Facebook page, Ashlyn and Kobe do some awesome lives, and I do too. And
you totally do.
but it's just good content, and it's consistent, and it's it's not too annoying. It's
they're short
4 to 6 minutes. Also, blogs are coming out, so if you go to our website, betrayaladdictedexpert.com, you can read our blogs. There's a new tool coming out called Picking Up the Pieces. It's about tools for early recovery. So we have a lot of content out there, and we do this just because we want to help, and so any of this content, if it's helpful to you, that's what we're trying to do. And if you want to share it with somebody else, we'd appreciate that too.
Yeah,
so.
that's your way of giving thanks to what we are providing you.
Right.
So.
Okay, guys, thanks for being here, and we'll see you again.
Adios.
Let me turn you guys off. Thanks for joining.
See you guys. Thanks for being here.